Monk Games, the Jagged Alliance 3 devs, have a long line of success from Tropico to Surviving Mars to Victor Vran. So then why, every time I play Jagged Alliance 3, do I slowly feel like I could or would want to play something else? Is it the conga line of dead mercs or the single mercenary who runs off mid-plan because I have $11 to my name because despite him having every damned weapon in the book, his accuracy rating could only generously be described as perhaps, and I spent all day healing him. We're going to see. I'm my own sponsor, and you are watching a video I hope you like. Subscribe and hit the notify all bell if you do. Videos on machine learning inside video games, Starfield, Remnant 2 review, and more are coming up. I give a copy away of the game to subscribers and commenters on videos. Here are my thoughts so far. Now first, Jagged Alliance 3, it's a pretty slick looking game. Ruts filled with water lead you to the entry of a base location you can track. Most scenery that can be used for blocking or diving behind just as some hopped up enemy mercenary fires a hello to your insides in RPG form look great. There's a sense of immersion and an excellent cohesion to the landscape and its use in the levels. Hiding behind logs, ripping across the top of a bunker watchtower to get a God here moment.
God here.
Are all parts that you will see and love. Environments play out well too. When it's baking hot, it actually looks that way versus the sometimes piss filter we see in other games where everything just looks like a baked-in ground yellow, like that old Deus Ex game. And animations are the same way. Characters reloading weapons, throwing grenades, bandaging each other. Actually, that one looks like your character's bandaging in the air a lot of times above the other player, like they're playing patty cake with the bandage. But everything has a nice layer of detail and sheen. Each mercenary putting boots on the ground has a different pair of boots. Characters racking grenade launchers over one shoulder and assault rifles and shotguns over the other all animate well and look separately very good. Even the UI in the game, when buying and selling the lives of those around you as a mercenary commander, switching through tabs from amateur bullet sprayers to expert mercenaries, they all seem to look a little bit like 1980s G.I. Joe characters that the original creators said, yeah, no, we can't make a toy out of that. The attention to detail makes it feel like a huge human hit raffle simulation, and it is that. I'll get to that a little bit later, though. Now let's talk about attention to detail in the game world that isn't always about the actual fighters. A good example of this attention to details, when you clean out a village of bad guys as you walk around and take side missions or look for loot, more and more villagers start to come out of the woodwork like they were all meerkats, probably wearing World War II missized helmets, just hanging out with their heads too low for you to see while you were killing everybody. And the village turns into this cool, bustling center. Or if you blast off the sides of a wall using free aim because you don't want to leave your position and watching parts fly off of that. Even rifling through a base sees a stack of papers strewn on the ground like you can grab intel from it instead of just a blinking single paper like you ask the bad guys to write a friggin' GPT-4 summary of their plans and put it in under 100 words. It's a nice spot and it helps the game feel very real, very lived in, and ultimately that much more rewarding when you see something new. However, this is not without its flaws. For example, the game has a slow motion kill camera that roughly approximates something just happening on screen. Watching them die can see them flipping like a cartwheel by the legs, even though you headshot them. And the effects that are there, blood and parts, have a tendency to just sort of splatter around on everything, looking insanely low budget for something that you can zoom on into. But so far, like I said, Jagged Alliance looks pretty damn good. But as you're going to hear in the rest of this video, every single positive starts to come with at least a very questionable element that almost feels like a negative. First, audibly, the game is actually pretty well done. Rocking through rainy terrain brings up a lot of sample density from the wet hush of rain in the background to the occasionally just loud enough to notice chortle of water that sounds like it's moving through a culvert nearby. Blasts and bullets and bad guys all sound great regardless of what's happening to them, like they're getting blasted or bullet holed. Voiceovers have them one line in one another as they see enemies or when they die, dropping Expendables level dying lines to one another as they just slowly fade off into the ether. But it's the gameplay that still has me at odds. First, you go to the merc section and you buy some mercenaries with a small amount of money that you start in the game, and you drop them on an island and try to capture a leader that's been kidnapped by the opposite side. The world's broken up into different views. First, the overworld view. This is with you passing time at specific spots on the map that have a ton of actions available. Training mercenaries or hanging out and getting ripped just in case your merc's 7% chance to hit the enemy wasn't already low enough. Repair equipment, find more, scout out areas that can make your next fight actually easier if you steal their supplies or kill their reinforcements. Each action you take here tracks down on a doom timer, showing you what is going to come up and what is going to be done, and always offering you that one indicator telling you that the mercenaries may end up one day just leaving if you don't pay them, regardless of what they're doing or what they are engaged in at that time. So be aware of that. Now, the big thing is the game has tutorials and hints and gives out a bunch of ideas on what to do even in this overview map. But it's almost catastrophically detailed game and never feels exactly presented well, and that's probably because it's trying to present so much. You can check out my preview here, where I had a couple hours with the game for the preview, and you can see my thoughts and how they've somewhat changed as I've spent more and more time with the game. For example, let's talk about in battle. You jump into battle and you have a bunch of different bars. You have action points to move, fight, reload, switch out weapons, and sometimes characters have skills they can use to give them different actions, like free moves. Each character usually has one or two abilities that are actually very cool. When commanding a character, sometimes getting them highlighted and looking around the locations, though, just to see where you want to move, is very hit and miss, like you're painting with someone else's hand. It never feels exactly right, especially in the busier battles or the busier locations. The game has three main areas of information in the actual screen for you to play, and that might be one too many. You have the listing on the left that shows your mercs, their statuses, and their action points available. On the lower left, you have the weapons they have currently equipped, as well as a button that can allow you to leap back into command and check some activities there. And the button bar is where all your actions for your characters are shown. And these are all expected. For instance, the ability to go high and low in stance, stealth shooting, special items, moves, and more. However, each has to be highlighted to see how many action points they cost, which would be helpful in larger battles to sort of see those right away. Also, laying down isn't the same as stealth, which of course isn't the same as hunkering down. All of those are different activities. For newcomers, deciding which does what and how those work together, let alone how they work together with other characters, or add on to that how they work against the enemy, but you may be wondering which really is worth it at any one particular time. And a sense of experimentation is not really celebrated here because experimentation usually just means cutting somebody open and seeing what's inside of them. Also, the game gives you the enemies that you can target on top of the bar. That's the static stuff. Then when highlighting a character, the entire page fills up with statuses, from dangers like telling you that the action will cause you to be shot in Overwatch, the obstructions nearby, if the enemy's armor is going to be pierced, as well as simple negatives and positives that are a readout that shows you the general things impacting your actual shot you're making. Like you have the marksmanship perk, or you have single shot on. Those would be a positive, and then maybe in the dark, target prone, and range would be considered negatives. It also tells you damage modifier there, but then again, also reads off the initial attack obstructed and armor piercing again below that, which can fill up a bit too much of the screen with a lot of doubled up information. Some of these you can turn on and off, but regardless of what you do, they're going to show up multiple times. Taking a shot draws a ring around the enemy and shows what parts are available to shoot, as well as warnings for them. What it does not give, and rightfully so, is a perfect fit and idea of your hit chance, and I'm fine with that. It's just your action points spent to fire and aim closer. You can actually spend more and more action points if you have any left over to take a tighter and tighter shot. However, it will never tell you exactly what's going to happen, and I like that. I think that while the HUD is a mess sometimes of icons and repeated data, at least you don't have that 99% chance to hit weirdness. The lack of the number lets the fiction of possibility and missing actually enter the picture and not be so noteworthy. We all remember the shitty snakemen from XCOM 2 slithering around, somehow juking a full frontal shotgun blast again and again and again. That game made everyone question if 99 somehow really meant 50. There's a reason I think for them treating the world like a repeated fucking flashcard, though. Because death here is so easily encountered. And even though you can switch some of this information off, you almost always need it on because you are going to be trying to make those shots. Even after hours of playing, I left it on because it was information I needed. And I'd rather have it right there in multiple places than not at all. Because an enemy with a machine gun can easily do insane amounts of damage in this game. And since you don't start with weapons of that caliber, unless you spend a ton on the merc at the starting, watching an enemy wade in with a machine gun is a nut-crunching moment. Also, hitting an enemy, even with a full sniper rifle, many times won't kill them in a headshot. It can, but you're going to see raid leaders, special characters, and just sometimes Humdrum Harry, a random run-of-the-mill guy paid in tacos and chits for the local whorehouse, shirking off your full-on headshot. Here's the thing. There are some games that are truly turn-based strategy games, but make no mistake, Jagged Alliance 3 with its stats, overland map activities, huge number of things to track, including sections of the island you haven't even been to yet, as well as ones that you moved away from, on top of quests, and on top of if you don't have enough money to pay the mercs and their sheer ammo, Jagged Alliance 3 is not a turn-based strategy game. It's a turn-based simulation of a strategy game. It has an amazing cycle of simulation here, and despite any other issues, that is its strength. It doesn't do near enough to onboard special and basic actions, let alone consequences later on and how it all merges. And if you run out of money, which is stunningly easy, you will just have to do a new save game or find an old save that you have that you can guess might have enough money and living dudes to continue to go on. This is compounded by the games throwing a ton of enemies at you from invisible places many times, where usually when they see you, they can alert everybody. And with no real visual cues you have to sometimes look all over the screen to see if somebody is slightly or may notice you. There's a simulation that they're trying to put over the top of it. And it's that even after all the warnings, the ideas, the pop-ups, the tutorials, it's still an unearthly level of depth. Even the UI for buying mercenaries has links and fake logins and alternate ways to find information, which can feel a little bit like the game doesn't want you to understand it. Jagged Alliance has always had this overwhelming mythic history of being difficult. Sometimes the best example of a good game are these systems that are not always naturally cohesive, but the elasticity of them across the core gameplay lets them function as drivers to keep a player going, motivated by seeing what happens as a reaction and perhaps even directly not caring about a specific action right away just to see what sort of happens. But I do wish that it didn't punish experimentation so much. Also, the more I played Jagged Alliance 3, the more I do question a bit of the gameplay loop. I don't hate it, but I question how I'm going to enjoy it as I continue playing it. Let me give you an example. Just footing a basic bitch level merc team is a ton of money. The game also sets you against a large number of enemies, as well as a ton of actions that you may or may not need to take, and you're not 100% sure when you need to do them. And puts money making activities after a distance boss battle situation at the very starting, meaning you're not really taking in a ton of money, even with the items that you may find around. This means that many times, speaking of items to find around, you end up forcibly walking through the world like Cain, looking at every map, even though there's nothing really interesting on them, just to try to find a single 9mm or a grenade. With these three hugely different worldviews, Jagged Alliance 3 has a lot of chances to hit a player with at least one of them not being something that feels enjoyable. They don't really understand how it makes sense in the larger picture. I love a lot of the game. As I continue to play it, as I dive in more and see the attrition of just not my mercs, but of the reward loop, I find myself wondering if celebrating with a single merc who hasn't even been in the starting team or maybe in the next half of another mercenary team, but finally getting the win is really the best of choices narratively. The distance emotionally you need to play this ever-grinding meat market of mercs mowed down by suppressive fire can sometimes feel like winning a Super Bowl and then going and high-fiving someone who retired 5 years ago because the rest of the team exploded on the field. You can't fault it for content. It simulates characters moving around on their own, has 2-player online co-op, it's hard as nails, and it feels like you're Diana in the Hitman series more than I actually expected, which was a pleasant surprise. All expectations, though, are fine to be broken. It just makes me wonder if the breaking is going to be more along the lines of that reward loop than I would originally have liked. So in the next bit of title card, you see some titles and games that I've been covering in the last couple weeks, as well as a list of reviews. Go ahead and click those if you liked this video. Subscribe, hit the notify all bell, but that's not all. We got Remnant 2's review coming up, a bunch of other videos, a video on AI, as I stated before, and really how AI is going to change gaming from the inside out. And it's not just quest writing, though I'm going to cover that as well. There's a large number of facets that are going to be dramatically impacted for the better in gameplay when it comes to AI, and I'm going to cover all those in a detailed video, somewhat like the Starfield one. With this game, I would say it's probably going to end up appealing to a lot of people, but it may end up appealing to that upper echelon who have a great deal of time and a lot of patience for restarting. So it might not be for everybody. I'll update this in the podcast or in a video later, but for right now, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm just sort of wondering how long that's going to last. Peace out, everybody. Make sure to subscribe and comment.
God, what's our status? They're not moving. You're clear.
You straight tripping. Do not be distracted by doubt. Visualize your success. Yo, need some WD-40 up in here.